Okay.
All right, I'm signing back
Hold
onto
on one
board doc.
second. Okay, go ahead.
1 second, I'm just logging back onto board docs for a sec. I was in.
You're in.
No, in board docs. 1 sec. Sorry, having technical difficulties.
It's on the screen.
Use the screen.
Oh, it's on your screen? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I know, but I like to have the, I guess it doesn't matter tonight.
Doesn't matter.
Okay. All right. Usually I like to have our version, but. Okay, so welcome everybody to this special Board of Education meeting, November 30th, 2020. Oh wait, I need a motion first, right? Because we didn't have an executive. So can I have a motion to open the meeting?
Motion from Linda.
A motion from Linda and a second from
Xavier.
Xavier. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, can we stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
for
it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay,
we
we
don't
don't have
have
to
these
go
tonight.
into the evacuation procedure since everyone is virtual tonight. And so we can move right to our business agenda. Okay, doesn't say the usual thing, so I'll say it is.
We can
upon
almost
recommendation-
treat this like an item for discussion because there's only one item on the agenda. So
Okay, but I mean, aren't I supposed to say it is upon recommendation of the superintendent of schools
you could do that.
that we consider for approval the service agreement with ATC Healthcare Services to provide medically qualified personnel for COVID-19 tests to students and staff. Could I have a motion, right?
From Tom.
Yes, a motion from Tom and a second
Linda, second.
from Linda. Okay, so now we can have a discussion.
Just a couple of quick points before we get started. And if anybody's on the phone and needs to mute, I can unmute you after. It does cause some reverberation. Okay. If anybody had a chance to see the governor's morning conference, he introduced a new 5-strategy program that changes the playing field a little bit in terms of where schools lie and how testing is situated. Very quickly, I know I've gotten a lot of questions about microclusters and yellow, orange, red zones. He did change some things today. He is adding factors that will be considered by him and the State Department of Health in determining where clusters are going to be identified. There is absolutely no way, unless you actually see the data they're using to predict this, because they've incorporated now data on hospitalizations, death rate, positivity rates, availability of beds and ICU beds in local hospitals, available staff and patient load management, availability of PPE and equipment, and that's usually on a county-wide basis. All of these are going to factor into whether or not geographic areas or local communities are identified as zones. He did indicate this morning that if hospitals in any area become overwhelmed, or in more than one area in particular, that he could implement that New York pause program again and initiate emergency hospital procedures. So this is something we just need to be aware of if the rates continue to go up. Right now, they're in a very bad place in Western New York, and I think every place around the state has been climbing. With respect to testing, it looks like what he did this morning was his part in trying to keep schools open. Obviously, there must be a vast array of tests available. These are Binax now rapid tests. There will obviously be a need for use of these tests by healthcare providers, nursing homes, schools, other essential workers, essential businesses, personal services, etc. But it looks like they changed the orange and red zone testing protocol. You don't need to test 100% of students and staff in person upon reopening. It looks like you just simply have to test 20% in an orange zone over the course of a month and 30% in a red zone over the course of a month. I did not see anything changing yellow zone testing. So as far as I can see, it's still 20% during a biweekly period. And if you're under the regional positivity rate, that would be all the testing you'd need. He did say that pooled testing would be allowed. I'm not a healthcare provider, so I don't know exactly how the pooled testing would work, but I believe what pooled testing is you can work multiple specimens or samples with the same test. I think that's some mechanism through which tests can be preserved. I don't know exactly how that would work, but the Department of Health would provide guidance there. And the state can actually step in and adjust testing for specific districts in certain circumstances, may actually increase testing requirements in local areas if needed. And as indicated in the past, local school districts, if they can't meet these mandates, would have to close. He did indicate that the spread now is different than the spread last March, which was the result of what he claimed were businesses and restaurants, et cetera. Now he's talking about it being caused by primarily 65–70% small gatherings. And that's obviously what we've all been focused on over the past couple of weeks. We're trying to spread that message that you don't know how this is going to impact a group. You don't know how it's going to impact the community and schools surrounding. And he also indicated that the vaccination program delivery to states could begin in a few weeks. Process should be inclusive and fair. And he was talking about New York setting the example, setting the tone for the most vibrant vaccination process in the country. So that's where we stand. And this contract, and I do want to give certainly two shout outs here. One to Diana Rich, who has been on one hand communicating and partnering with all these agencies and doing a lot of the communication work for me, for the district. And Kathy, who has been working diligently to get these contracts, to get this contract in particular in place and communicating with legal and our insurance reciprocal, just to make sure that everything is where it should be. So what you're actually looking at this evening is the final contract that has been executed by ATC. What ATC would do, we would operate under the county's limited service laboratory license, and ATC would provide us with medical professionals that would help to administer as many tests as we need over a time period. And it is probably, if we're going to use outside people to do this, among the more cost-effective ways to go. The tests are not of no cost whatsoever, and we would operate with the number of staff members we need. And again, if you've looked at the cost breakout, it's about as least costly as something could be in this situation. So there's the introduction. The idea tonight is to have this in place if and when we need it, and tonight would be the first step in that process.
Can we ask questions now,
Yes,
Jim?
absolutely.
So would testing be only for staff and students, or would we have to open it to the public?
It's a good question, and there are certain questions I can't answer right now, but at this point, we are planning for testing our students and staff.
Only?
Correct.
Okay.
If we are forced to do otherwise, I would obviously communicate that, but at this point, the plans that we are putting in place involves 20% or whatever the percentage is of our students and staff.
Right, if we're deemed yellow. Okay. And then my second question is, I saw the hourly rates for LPNs and then for the assistants. So that would be our responsibility, but the tests themselves, the county would provide, or the state?
Back to the state would provide the tests.
Okay.
And we did have our own nurses very graciously agreed to be trained in use of the test, so they're aware of what's happening here. And obviously they have been doing a lot of the frontline work, all of the frontline work in our nurse's office throughout the district. They have been doing terrific jobs, and they are in the know in terms of what needs to be done here. And obviously their expertise would be involved as well. But we need to make sure that they are able and fully capable of doing their daily, engaging their daily responsibilities. And this is one way we can spread the responsibility of the testing itself.
Oh, Jim, it looks like we lost Christine. She said
Yeah.
she lost the connection.
Yeah, lost, yeah.
Okay, she'll be back.
Yep. So I have a question. How would this work? Would we have personnel in each building, or would it rotate? Or?
There are certain logistics I can't speak to right now because it might be one building that's identified or two buildings. It could be 8. It could be some combination thereof.
Okay.
Or some combination in between.
Right.
So those logistics would be determined depending on how many buildings are involved. I did hear this morning, and I have not confirmed it, that if there are, for example, 2 buildings that would need to engage in this, that the 20% or whatever the percent is could come from both of those buildings. That was not my initial understanding. I thought it was a school by school based on all the information that had been received to date, but that's something we would confirm. And there is no requirement in terms of staff versus student breakdown.
Jim, I have a couple of questions. You've answered one of these questions. Can people test outside of our district? Can they go to their own facilities and test?
Yes, that's a great question, and they absolutely can. It just has to be within the window, that testing window. So if we have a 2-week time period to get the testing done, once the zone is designated, the clock starts ticking then, and they are welcome to choose a provider of their own and submit the result during that testing window, whatever the zone may be. It could be 2 weeks or a month.
And Jim, you said that the tests are free, but sending it to the labs, getting the results, are the labs going to charge us, or is that as well?
No, that's all. The results are actually determined right on site. It takes about 15 minutes for the results to be determined. We would have the facility. Anybody having a problem with muting?
Yes.
Okay. We would have the facility set up in stations so that before the individual leaves whatever the facility is, they would sit down with a professional, and the results would be provided, and any education needed would be conveyed as well.
Thank you, Jim.
Hey, Jim, I have a question.
Yep.
How would the testing take place? Is it something we would do at each individual school, or, I mean, because I know a lot of times when we get the test now, a lot of the medical providers are very careful about administering the test and doing those kinds of things. And I just don't know if it'd be long lines of people at the schools to get the tests, or how does that work?
We would have to work on that scheduling so it doesn't clog up. My understanding is that this works very quickly. It's been done in a couple of Suffolk schools that I've had communications with over the past couple of days. It can be set up in a manner where the line flows very quickly. And obviously anybody who's administering the test or around the test would be geared up in full-fledged PPE. The test is a shallow swab. It is not particularly invasive compared to some of the other tests that are out there. And from what I understand, and this is directly from the state, that there are ample tests to distribute to any schools across the regions that need them.
Christine is back, Jim, but she needs to be unmuted. Sorry.
And Kelly needs to be unmuted as well.
Thank you. I have a quick question, Jim. Did we meet the 20 and 30% of parents that said that they would be willing to consent?
Hang on one second, Kelly. Again, I've looked at total numbers. I have not broken it down by school, so we'd have to look at that by school once those designations are shared with us. And if we didn't, we would reach out again.
Okay, thanks.
And that survey, again, I want to remind anybody who's on tonight, there's no commitment in that survey. It was really designed to gain a sense of anybody who was vehemently against the testing under any circumstance. I do understand that depending on how the tests would be administered or where, et cetera, that they may or may not participate. But if they were willing under certain circumstances, we did want to know that. And again, as Xavier asked before, if anybody wanted to test on the outside and submit the result within that time window, they could do so. And that would contribute to the percentage required.
Jim, can I ask another question? So if I understood correctly, our financial responsibility, two things, the hourly rate for the staff and PPE, providing PPE,
Correct.
correct? Okay.
Now, again, there may be some districts are doing this in all sorts of different ways.
Right.
There are some that are not bringing in anybody from the outside, and actually anybody can be trained to administer these tests. I personally am not comfortable having somebody without medical training administer these tests, and our nurses are we can only spread them so far.
Right.
There are other districts that have, I think the minority of districts have gone with more comprehensive services and may even be purchasing test kits outside of what's being offered here. And actually, I'm going to say probably the majority are doing this on their own in-house with the county support and the free test kits from the state. So we're sort of in the middle here, and we are just looking to bring in staff who are capable of administering these tests under the LSL of these Suffolk County Department of Health Services, and can help us to keep the line moving, for lack of a better term.
Jim, I've had some parents reach out to me that are trained in giving the tests and are doing so at their place of practice. Would you allow them to help?
At this point, and I had a couple of those reach out to me as well, Kelly, I'm sure a couple of them are common, and I have not responded to them yet. I actually have those emails put aside, so I could contact them if necessary, but if this works out, I don't think I'd need them.
Okay.
But I certainly, on call, if they have, one was a PA, all of these
Yeah.
people had some sort of medical training, and they are clearly capable of administering these tests. They just have to be trained in this particular kit.
And the other piece to that is the insurance, right? So the ATC has supplied our maximum insurance that we require for them to be participating in this with our staff and students. So that's something to consider as well.
Mhm.
A lot of schools are going that route, Kelly, just grabbing volunteers, EMS workers, local physicians or PAs, medical assistants, et cetera. We just wanted to have something in place. This is there if we need it. And my guess is we will need it at some point. And to have something experienced and reliable on hand and at this cost is worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
It seems like resources might be a challenge as we move through the winter, based on what Cuomo was saying today during the press conference. So to have those extra resources available if we need them, if the staffing company has some sort of shortage themselves, but I guess if they're under contractual obligation, they have to provide service.
They've made this agreement with the understanding that they are able to provide services. They're not an overnight developed firm. They have been in place for a long time. It's one of the reasons we chose to go in this direction. Look, anything can happen in terms of rates and what's needed. My concern is more on the line of test kits. Are there going to be enough test kits to distribute across the state if in fact multiple regions are hit at the same time? But that's the reason we're doing this. So we have help here. And again, he mentioned this morning that those tests would be available. So.
But then he also said in his next breath, if hospitals or nursing homes needed them more, then they would have to be rationed accordingly. So that was a little bit iffy.
My guess is, well, that's one of the reasons he's changed the testing protocol. And I wouldn't put it past him to do it again.
Interesting.
Hey, Jim, the 20% that we need to reach, is that a number based on attendance or based on building population?
No, you're hitting the right questions tonight. That's based on the in-person population. So anybody who's fully remote would not be in the denominator.
Okay.
Anything else, guys?
I got one last question. On the pricing exhibit, it does list a travel rate. I'm assuming that's just a pro forma. There's no travel that would be associated. We're not going to pay these people to drive from home to our schools, are we?
I don't believe so. Kathy, can you elaborate on that? I think that's just that they were going from building to building in district.
That's what it is, with using their own vehicle going building to building.
Yep.
Okay.
So if it was part of the pricing, it would be minimal.
It's going to be a buck to get from one building to the next.
Yep. And that's the current mileage rate, I believe. Is that correct?
It
Kathy?
is. That's the standard. Yep.
Yep.
All right. Anything else? And we have a motion and we have a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, folks, for all of your support through this. This is the only
Thank
way we
you.
can get through this, and that's as a collective entity. And it's been this hasn't been fun, but everybody's focus is the same: taking care of our kids, our community, and as best we can to keep these schools in good working order, safely open.
Okay. I see we don't have anything else on the agenda, even a commentary. There wasn't anybody that was even raising their hand, I don't think so. Right?
No,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's what I was just going to say. That was the next words. So can we have a motion to adjourn? Michelle in a second.
Second.
Is that Xavier?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Jim.
Hey, all.
Thanks,
Folks.
Bye,
Catherine.
thank you.
Right.